Most people know Abhishek Bachchan as an actor, as someone born into a legacy powerful enough to define an entire career on his own. But the most interesting part of his story is the identity he chose to build for himself, not the one he inherited. He bet on Kabaddi before anyone saw it as a serious commercial sport. He helped turn the Jaipur Pink Panthers into one of the most successful franchisees in the Pro Kabaddi League. Abhishek, welcome to Future Unplugged. I think the first one, Abhishek, if I may, most of us live with one identity and, or we try and create one. You have been trying to create another one you already have one, huge legacy, and you're creating another one at the same time. What inspired you to do so? As an investor, invested not just in business, I mean, the Swiggies and the Zeptos and the Nagins and so on and so forth, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but also sports. Is it the sport fan in you which made you do it?
It was, absolutely. I've been a wannabe sportsman all my life. My love for sport was inculcated in me by my father, who's a huge sports fan. And I remember, spending hours with him in his study in our home, where the walls, one side would be filled with books and the other side was filled with VHS tapes of, famous Muhammad Ali matches. He's a big boxing fan. He used to box in school. He introduced me to Brazil and Pelé and Zico and Junior and Socrates, the dream team of the 70s and to football. So from a very young age, I used to play sports with him. He's taught me a lot of sports. He taught me how to play Kabaddi. I saw a film of his called Ganga Ki Saugand once, and in which he plays Kabaddi. And I asked him, what is this sport? And he took me to our garden and he taught me Kabaddi.
Oh, goodness.
And so it started from there. And being a huge basketball fan, the tragedy of my life was every school in India has a basketball court, but they do everything but play basketball on it.
Right.
They play all different kinds of sports.
That's true.
So I wanted to make a change to that. And I remember it was actually the Brazil World Cup 2014, was it? I was there with my dad and happened to have a chance meeting with Sepp Blatter, who was then the head of FIFA. Mm-hmm. And he very casually passed a remark which didn't go down very well with me. He said, 1.2 billion people, at that point in time, that was our population. 1.2 billion people, you can't put 11 lads on a pitch. Mm-hmm. That hurt.
Yeah.
So it's the sports fan in me that actually gets into it. Because I think after a point of time, it's very nice to be an armchair critic. I'm not very good at doing that. I like to be in the mix of things. And if you want to see change, you have to be the change.
Right.
I never looked upon it as a business. I still don't. Although my accountant, kind of is not too happy about that attitude of mine.
You started with Kabaddi many years back. And, it was a pretty rustic sport, if I may call it so. As you said, maybe played with a lot of sand, etc. And, people would put sand on their bodies so that they get, there's friction and so on and so forth. You've seen that in movies and even otherwise. What attracted you to Kabaddi? And if I may, in the same vein, ask you the question, because Kabaddi was the first thing that you embraced at some level. And then you picked up football, right? Yeah. And you picked up a team with Dhoni. Yes, I mean, we have been huge football fans, some part of the country. But really, we are a cricket fanatic country, right? And you picked up Kabaddi in football. Yep. I'll come to cricket later, but, what got you to Kabaddi and football in India?
Kabaddi happened by chance. Mr. Mahendra is somebody that I have immense respect for and somebody I really look up to. And at a chance meeting, he said, hey, I know you love basketball. Have you ever thought about Kabaddi? I said, well, I've played it as a kid. I haven't thought about it for a long time. He said, I'm putting together a league. Would you be interested in picking up a team? And I was like, that's very left field. Kabaddi, do people still play Kabaddi? So I had another meeting with him and Charu, his brother-in-law, and somebody who actually came up with the concept of the Pro Kabaddi League, Mr. Charu Sharma. And he kind of took us through the beats of it. And I went to my dear friend Bunty Walia, who I also work with. So I called Bunty and I said, hey, let's do some R&D on Kabaddi. And we got to know that very close by in Juhu, where we are right now, there was a tournament being played, a local tournament. So he said, hey, wear a cap and a hoodie and let's quietly go and see what this is all about. And when, he came to pick him, I said, where are we going? He said, oh, there's this one chawl just over here. I said, we went to a chawl to Kabaddi chawl, Anand Mahindra, Charu Sharma. This is not making sense to me. And I kid you not, I mean, there's no way for me to verify the actual number, but what seemed like at least 10,000 people literally falling off the balconies of the Chawl, and they were playing in the Angan of the Chawl. And I walked in and I heard the crowd, and I just turned to him, I said, let's go. And I called Mr. Mahendra, I said, I'm in, what do we need to do? It was infectious. I was like, wow. He's like, you saw a different kind. I'm talking about indoor kabaddi, and he showed me the stuff, colorful mats. I said, this is exhilarating. I said, we have to do this. And this is our sport. This is an indigenous Indian sport. And so we got involved, and I picked up the Jaipur team. Everybody asked me, why Jaipur Pink Panthers and why Jaipur? Jaipur is where I shot part of my first film. So in a sense, it was an auspicious city for me to start something new. So that's why Jaipur. It's also where Aishwarya and I started dating each other. So it has an emotional part. Pink Panthers, because pink at that point was my daughter's favorite color.
All right.
Pink Panther was a film that Aishwarya made. And when I was a kid, my father used to call me Tiger. How are you, Tiger? And one day I thought I should reply to this guy. He's calling me Tiger. So I said, how are you, Panther? So it was a joke between my dad and me.
I see.
So the Panther came from there. And so yeah, that's how Jaipur Pink Panthers happened. And about 2 weeks before the first match, which happened end of August, I had moved to Jaipur where our camp was going on. And I used to sit with the boys and train with them and make sure what are they eating? What is the menu for the day? Okay, this is allowed, this is not allowed. Why are you giving them, parathas? They're athletes, you want to be giving them aloo paratha and all, but that's what they wanted to eat. So, we kind of micromanaged like that. And we came to Mumbai where the first match was happening at the NSCI Dome. I was playing Ronnie's team, U Mumbai, great team, favorites for the tournament at that point of time. And we got thrashed.
Right.
And I remember we finished the match and I went onto the team bus and I told my captain, I said, boys, what happened? We were ready. And their answer was just so cute. They said, nahi, भैया हुआ क्या कि हम लोग खेल रहे थे भी उधर देखी कि अमिताभ बच्चन जी खड़े हो हम लोग कभी देखे नहीं उनको. So I said, okay. So उनके बगल में सचिन तेंदुलकर बैठा हुआ था और उनके पीछे शाहरुख खान जी थे और फिर वहाँ भाभी जी भी वहाँ बैठी थी. So I said, oh God. So I saw the replay, and if you see the replay of the first ever match, you see they're playing and they keep looking over like this, and, oh my God, they've never seen these people. I still remember the night before we had like a all-party meeting, and everybody was just like, this is a shot in the dark. We don't know if it's going to work. And the morning after the first match happened, the front page of the newspaper had a photograph of my father, Shahrukh, and Amir, who had very sweetly come to see the match. They were all wearing JPP jerseys. And suddenly the conversation was like, hey, what's Kabaddi? My God, these people are at the Kabaddi match. What is this? And it just took off.
And football, Abhishek? What
So football, thanks to Mr. Sepp Blatter, I think.
Right.
I really took to heart what Mr. Blatter said, that, 1.2 billion people, we can't put 11 people on a pitch.
Yeah.
And I'd seen the talent. When the ISL came about, me and my partner Vita Dani, we obviously bid for a team. We didn't win the bid. Then what happened is one of the franchises, I think it was a Bangalore franchise at that point in time, fell through. And a space opened up. And that's when Vita and I spoke and we said, okay, but the option was Chennai. Chennai is not known as a football city, but over here we had the opportunity to take Indian football to a newer height, which is something I felt very passionate about. And Chennai was virgin ground, so to speak. You had the opportunity to build something tangible over there.
Right.
So we bid for Chennai, we won Chennai, and soon before the season started, we brought on Mahi as well,
right,
for what he means to the city. And, he gave us huge leverage in a marketing space. And I still remember our first home match, which was the second match we played in the ISL. Our first home match was against Kerala, which was then owned by Sachin. And I remember that morning of the match, Vita and I were literally on the field with mops because it had rained and we didn't have time to put a proper drainage system. So here we are, first home match, great, and we're actually on the pitch with mops drying the grass. So, Vita and I have built that team from that. We've literally worked like that.
Right.
And the first match was magical because we hadn't sold any tickets. I think 600 tickets is what our gate receipts were in the first match. And after we finished drying the pitch, one of our management guys came and said, 600 tickets. So we looked at each other saying, this is not good news. I called my dad and I said, do you want to come? It's our first home match. He said, yeah, of course I'll come. So he showed up and I went to receive him. And I said, we're having trouble putting out the tickets and we're working something out. Maybe we'll comp a few tickets, get the crowd, because, we have to get them used to watching the sport. He said, no, hold on a second. And he put out a tweet saying, hey, I'm in Chennai. I was like, okay, all right, that's good. And he said, let me do one thing. Let me just make a few phone calls. And he picked up and he said, hey, Rajni, there's a match you have to come in the evening. So I said, what? He said, yeah, I've called Rajni uncle there. I said, okay. And I don't know how, somehow that made it onto social media that Rajnikant was coming to the match. and that was, I was like, wow. And I remember reaching the match and to my luck, Rajni uncle was sitting on the same sofa with Sachin Tendulkar. Now, being an India fan, Sachin Tendulkar is God. And then my father shows up and sits on the same sofa. So all three of them are sitting on the same sofa. And the stadium was packed. And we were sitting just behind Vita and I, around halftime, I said, Vita, we're in big trouble. She said, what are you talking about? The stadium is packed. I said, yeah, but nobody's looking at the game. They're all looking at these three guys who very cutely are all sitting, all scrunched up in one sofa like this. I said, nobody's watching the match. And she said, oh, yeah. I said, they're not going to come for all the matches. And then it was against Kerala, which is obviously a big, it's like a big derby, it's South Indian derby over there. And in the 90th minute, one of our defenders and vice captain at that point in time, Bernard Mendy, French player from PSG, scored an unbelievable overhead bicycle kick. And it was so funny because Mendy scored this kick and suddenly the whole stadium just turned and said, hey, what just happened there? And they saw the back of his jersey, it said Mendy. So they thought he was a local. And they just went crazy. And I said, okay, now we're set. So then what we did is we realized that over there, they need a personal connect. So we actually started a marketing campaign.
But the economics of the ISL, have they kept up? I mean,
it's been challenging because see what happens is everything gets compared to cricket.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that they're completely different markets. Yeah. The other thing we have to understand with football, which you'll appreciate, is our direct comparison is with European football. Yeah. European football has been around for over 150 years. You have 150 years of legacy, fandom. You can't compare it to that. Europe is arguably where the most competitive club football is played.
Right.
In the world. Asia is not even second. We have a long way to go, but you cannot compare. But I've seen the kind of fandom that we can generate. It's going to take time. You're going to have deep pockets. There's going to be a huge cash burn. But I firmly believe it'll pay off in time to come.
Right. Right. No, I hope so as well, because I mean, I think it started off very, very well. And there's so many other sports that we are celebrating, but somewhere I felt that football, and these days, I mean, look at it, people are staying up nights to watch the World Cup in the US.
Yes.
So why not in India? So it's
absolutely. And that's the dream.
Right. So I have to ask you this question. Were you disappointed that Chelsea didn't do as well this year?
Oh gosh, that's a fresh wound. No, actually.
Right.
I've had this discussion last night with my dad, so no. I mean, having been a Chelsea fan for close to 30 years now, I think there is a transition that's happening at Chelsea right now. And I think it was important to have a season like this because it's a rude awakening. And I think maybe that's what's required in modern day sport where it's more about business than it is about the sport and the loyalty. I think a jolt like this was very required. It's a young squad, but I think under able guidance, I think it's the wake-up call they needed. So I think once in a while, it's nice to get that, that unfortunate slap on your face of having a terrible season that wakes you up.